both Nicola Peltz and Brooklyn Beckham have been to Monteito to meet Harry and Meghan. Do you see Harry and Meghan's kind of input in this, or am I going too far?
It's very wimpish behaviour. Both. I mean, you think, what on earth are they moaning about? They've been given everything by their parents, both of these guys. Anybody who trashes their own family publicly deserves what they get, in my opinion.
And I think the stakes are really high for this.
I personally think it's time for him to get on with his life, but the way he's been talking in court is that it's very personal.
It wasn't high quality or anything like that, or high interest or highly valued, but it was high profile, and maybe it's a vehicle to boost the sales of
because
her products.
Netflix are her partners in as ever as well. So
maybe they're cleverer than we think.
One thing that we know about Andrew is that he doesn't listen to advice from anybody.
Personally, going to Marsh Farm is not far enough away. He should be exiled out of the country. If he cannot answer questions under oath, kick him out of the country.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where we ask the biggest questions of the week, such as, after Harry has his day in court, will he ever stop hating the media? As Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's Royal Lodge exit draws nearer, will his daughter stick by him? And did Brooklyn Beckham get royal inspiration for that social media family truth bomb? I'm the Sun's royal editor, Matt Wilkinson, and joining me to answer all that and much, much more, I'm pleased to welcome royal author and journalist Robert Jobson and royal broadcaster Sarah Hewson. Thanks, guys. Now, as we are filming, Prince Harry has got this high-profile court case against Associated News Limited. It is no secret that Harry has never liked the media. Do you think at some stage Harry will move on from this, Rob? Do you think after this case eventually finishes, will he continue rallying against the media, or do you think it's time for him to just get on with his life?
I personally think it's time for him to get on with his life, but the way he's been talking in court is that it's very personal. He's talking about that he wanted to change the media landscape. Well, the media landscape's changed dramatically over the last 20 years. It's almost unrecognisable from what we're dealing with at the moment. So I think in many ways, if that's what his aim is, he's banging at a door that's already opened. But I don't think he will. He does clearly hate the media, and I think it's got worse since his marriage. I remember occasions, I'm sure Sarah does as well, early on when, I remember being in Australia and chatting to him on the plane there. The media had a quiz in a pub on one of the islands when he was on the visit, and he had his own team and cheated. But it was all quite jolly. He was having a drink at the bar. He was quite chatty. So this business about the media, he understands the media. He understands that if he wants to have a profile in the world, that he has to have a public profile to make money, and that he needs the media for that. But do I think he'll ever stop hating them? No, not really, because he blames the media for the death of his mother. But I really do think, if he wants to have a decent life and a decent public profile, then he really needs to move on.
So this is a 9-week trial. We're estimating it's costing about £39 million. It's about use of illegal news gathering, allegations that are denied by Associated newspapers. Just explain, for our viewers, why is it so important to Harry, the context of this?
Harry's described this over recent years, and this has been going on for a very long time now, as his life's work and this personal crusade to reshape the media landscape. He's talked about the feelings of paranoia that he experienced, the damage that was caused to his relationships, the lack of trust, for example. And this is the last of his cases, privacy cases against newspaper groups. And arguably, it is the biggest one. As you say, it's going to last 9 weeks. And I think the stakes are really high for this. And he's there sitting in court alongside the likes of Liz Hurley, Elton John and David Furnish are fellow claimants in this case as well. So it is extremely high profile. Prince Harry, the star witness, and also someone that has the financial firepower to be able to go through with this. So it is a really big deal for him. We've seen him have a lot of litigation over recent years. This last, as I said, of the privacy cases. He's still fighting for that Home Office security, and that's something that's been ongoing for a long time. He lost his case for that last year, but now going to review, and he is optimistic that the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is going to grant him that security when he does come back to the United Kingdom. So once all of this is dealt with, then I think we might open the door potentially to a few more meetings with his father, the king. He said, if the security's sorted, I'll bring my family back. I'll bring the grandchildren back to visit their grandfather.
It's interesting that the royal family are keeping away from Harry during
While
this
the court
trial.
cases are going
while
on,
this court case is going on. And we could get, I'm led to believe a decision is due this month. We could hear back on the Ravix. They might not announce it. It might just be a kind of, I don't think they, because of security, they don't announce things publicly. Yeah. But we might learn during this trial whether or not Harry gets his taxpayer-funded armed security. And I've not sat in court. Colleagues have been in court and they said, I think there's 1 or 2 security guards inside court with Harry at the moment, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, we know from the last time he was here, there was supposed to be an issue with the stalker. There's other issues he's complained about. I mean, I've had some kickback about my views on this. I mean, look, a lot of people think, they call him the grifter. They say that he decided to leave. He made his own bed and he's got to lie in it. His father, I know, obviously warned him about the problems that security would happen if he did, he left his frontline job as a royal. But the problem is that he can't have the liaison that you have at the right level of someone of his profile with the security services, everything that goes with it, and you can't pay for it in that respect. It has to be paid for, and it has to.
He tried to pay,
and he couldn't do it. And that's the. In a way, I absolutely agree with many people that say that he shouldn't have it. He's made his own bed, but my only issue is it's probably, as I reported through the Times of Diana, is that she died basically because of failed security, and they took the security away from her at her own volition.
And then she was at the hands of the Al-Fayed security
and then it was
operation.
Poor security, and that is effectively why she died. Now, I spoke at to Ken Wolfe, Diana's bodyguard and Harry's bodyguard, and he was of the same opinion as me that he made his own bed, he shouldn't have the security. Until now, we live in a very volatile world. It's a very changing world. He is a high-profile target. He's the son of the king, and he didn't choose that. He was born with that. And
also served in Afghanistan.
And he wrote in his own book, again, on this issue, and about the number of kills he had and all this. So he hasn't made it easy. But I just feel for the money involved, if something happened to him, I think a lot of people would look back and say that was a mistake. Now, that said, I absolutely agree with so many of the critics and say, well, that's his problem. But I personally have that niggling thing that if something happened, then we'd all be looking at, navel gazing. Sure. And over a relatively small amount of money, it could have been avoided.
No one wants anything to happen to Harry. A lot of the people I've spoken to have said, well, of course he gets protected if he, when he comes over to the UK.
A lot of people online don't. They give it both barrels, and I understand why they give it both barrels. But I just think there's a niggling thing in me would say that if you've been too loud about it, then actually it's just that there are lots of ministers we don't even know have got protection.
Well, former Prime Ministers, Liz Truss, how long did she serve? And you're entitled to lifelong security. Harry is the son of the king. Look, I know it's a hard sell politically, and you're going to say to the taxpayer when we're seeing, public service cuts, OK, you're going to be funding someone who's moved to California, but ultimately, because of the family into which he was born and the position he is in, he is higher risk.
It's not black and white.
It's not just that, though. It's the rules. I mean, the rules that they said, well, you're no longer a working royal. You're not over here living and working, so you're not eligible, or you're not considered a high risk to be a.
But I think the world shifts.
The rules as opposed to anything else.
What he's asking for is that review, isn't it?
And he's having the review,
and he is now getting the review. To
be
look
careful
at
what
his
you wish for. If he loses it, what
circumstances.
happens? What does he do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he doesn't come back much. And again, a lot of people online will be saying, good, we don't want him back.
Well, my issue with this, I don't know what you two think, but I'm just going to float this idea. He's obviously in court, as I say, high-profile court case, giving evidence, over a 9-week trial, complaining about stories that are written about him from like 10, 15, 20 years ago. And he has got this long campaign to get his security back. Does this not just play into this whole idea that he is a bit of a moaner, looking back at things in the past rather than looking forward?
Without doubt. I mean, and also I'm surprised actually with this case. I thought there was a time with statute of limitations. I mean, we're dealing with things so long ago. But look, he is a bit of a moaner. Let's be honest. I mean, his book Spare is one long moan. But at the same time, I think he he lives in a bit of a bubble. I think he thinks, when he arrives at court, it's all like almost like he's embarrassed at being the star again. But I think a lot of people are tired of him now, and I think that he let himself down with the criticism of his family in Spare, which was, again, it was his truths, most of it. A lot of people disagree with it.
You see, I think that when he came back in September of this year, actually the public was generally very pleased to see him again, and seeing him in the old Harry, the kind of more relaxed, more optimistic, the way he interacts with the children when he's at the Well Child Awards. When we see him at the Invictus Games, we get glimpses of the old Harry. He was a huge asset to the royal family. We can't forget that.
A long time ago, though, but a lot has happened since
I
then.
do think that there is still affection for Prince Harry, no matter what he has done, no matter what he has said. There are a lot of people that still feel a huge amount of sympathy for him.
Some people, I wouldn't say a lot of people.
Just before we move on, you've just raised this idea of an old Harry. Rob, is there an old Harry and a new
he's old
Harry?
now, he's over 40. The reality is we keep harping back to a time when it was good old Diana's boys, when he was 20. Now, this is a guy that's a father. He should be a bit more mature. And the way that he's launched into his own father and family, I personally think is unacceptable. He goes on about, this is now my pa's time, I've got to devote time to him. Every time he comes to London, there's a huge drama, albeit, the media probably create that as well. It's always a drama, and I think that that's probably what William has had enough of as well. He's over it. They're all over the drama of Harry, which is probably okay when you're a Brooklyn Beckham's age, in your mid-20s. But when you're in your 40s, I think it's time to grow up a little bit and realise that actually parenting's not easy. Living life is not easy,
Isn't that what's key this time? That, he's arrived, seeing him in court, how he carries himself away from the court appearances, as in, does he keep a low profile? Do we get no interviews at the end of this court case? Does that then pave the way for that rapprochement with his father? Because he's got to be keeping a low profile and head down.
The problem with Harry and his father is that every time that he says he wants to have a rapprochement or a reconciliation, he then goes and blurts some more information.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So they can't trust him. And the bottom line is you can't trust somebody who, frankly, is making a living on the back of his family.
But he has been brought a bit closer in now. He has had that meeting with his father.
He's had 2 meetings, Sarah, really. That's it. 2 meetings. And, they're less than an hour, those meetings. That's not exactly great. I think that they don't trust him.
Better than it was, though.
Better than it was, because the king, of course, is a dad, ultimately.
Yeah.
And, they exchange gifts, as Matt wrote exclusively in The Sun. And, the bottom line is that was... And there was some joke about it being, always like being like a royal visit. Look, that's not the closest relationship in the world. And I think we've probably made a bit much of it. And I also think that the other royals, particularly Camilla, who he trashed in Spare, and William, are very conscious that allowing him to come back in brings its own problems.
Oh, no one's suggesting it's going to be easy at all. But ultimately, there's a father and son at the heart of this story.
Well, look, a family divide, a father and son barely talking to each other, publicly fighting each other over the years, posting messages on social media. We should really talk about, excuse me about this, but we should really talk about another wealthy son of a very famous wealthy man who is married to an American woman. I just want to touch on, you mentioned Brooklyn Beckham.
I know, it's like very posh and backed, isn't it?
So Brooklyn Beckham's posted on social media this week that he was being controlled by a family that values public promotion above all else. My parents and team continue to go to the press. He accused his family, this is Beckham and Posh Spice Victoria, or Lady Victoria, and Sir David, of placing lies in the media and publicly revealing rows with his family. He also says, I have been controlled by my parents for most of my life. There are so
many parallels.
This sounds very familiar.
Matt, it's the brand, the importance of the brand over family, the firm, in Harry's version of the events. Even Dressgate, the wedding dress that Victoria Beckham pulled out of, apparently, according to Brooklyn's account, at the 11th hour, versus the bridesmaid dress, and who made who cry over Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid dress. We've got a row over the use of the name, the family name as well. There are so many similarities. And we know that the King and Sir David have bonded over recent months and years. Bees.
Bees.
Bees and gardening.
But they're wimps, aren't
But
they?
they've
Both
got
of them
this in
wimps,
common.
aren't they? I mean,
Not only have Charles and Sir David Beckham bonded over the last couple of years, we do know that both Nicola Peltz and Brooklyn Beckham have been to Monteito to meet Harry and Meghan. Do you see Harry and Meghan's kind of input in this, or am I going too far?
Well, I mean, you don't know. Even if they read the magazines, which I'm sure that the Brooklyn Beckham must do, because surely he's got better things to do with his time. It's very wimpish behaviour. Both. I mean, you think, what on earth are they moaning about? They've been given everything by their parents, both of these guys, and they've been given a great privileged start. I'm sure if Brooklyn Beckham had been the son of a electrician from East London, he wouldn't be marrying this multi-billionaire woman. The reality is, it's very poor show. Anybody who trashes their own family publicly deserves what they get, in my opinion. I think it's awful. And if they expect there be trust and reconciliation afterwards, good luck. I don't think anybody would trust them. Either of them.
I mean, the difference at this stage is that Harry has made it clear that he does want to reconcile with his family, and Brooklyn Beckham says, I don't. And, he has burned a lot of bridges and done a lot of damage to the brand by what he said.
That he signed, Harry? Because there's a lot more material you can get after the reconciliation. Do another book.
Well, I think we're past that now.
I don't.
I mean, if Brooklyn, as I say, we do know they've been round for dinner in Monteito. I mean, if Brooklyn and Nicola are listening to Harry and Meghan, is that the right direction? Should they be following what Harry and Meghan's been doing for the last 4 or 5 years?
I don't think they care, do they? I mean, they've got so much money, both of these couples. They don't really care. They obviously don't listen to advice too much, because if they really want to get reconciliation, the best thing to do is say nothing.
I mean, Brooklyn talks, doesn't he, about the Beckham team around them, which is a bit like Harry and the kind of men in grey suits around his family. But he has gone from one family with a big team around them into another extraordinarily wealthy team with a lot of money and a lot of advisors as well within the Peltz family. So he will have no shortage of advice.
But it comes down to, doesn't it also, do you remember the big story that Harry moaned about in Spare was the whole Harry the Nazi sunsplash, how the William and Catherine, were almost encouraging him. They were howling with laughter. They would, all these things. And his father then sold out using PR to spin the line, which was a false line, in the News of the World story, and all about the drinking and the Harry at the local pub and the drug taking. But he seems to ignore the fact that at the centre of all this was they were covering up his behaviour. It was something that he had done, and it's like everybody else's fault. And I think that's generally the problem with Harry. Everything around him, which he doesn't like, is everybody else's fault.
Ultimately, there are two families here who are going through an almighty public feud. And it's really, really sad to see that. We might all be devouring all of the copy and the social media posts, but there are, two parents in Brooklyn's case and a son who are, potentially irreparably divided right now.
And there are so many similarities that we've gone through, but we can confirm that there was no inappropriate dancing from anyone at Harry and Meghan's wedding, like the allegation is.
We don't know.
Brooklyn, Beckham and Nicola. But maybe
that
the
is
only
the
one that
most
didn't
excruciating allegation of the whole.
Yeah. We'll leave that to them too. I don't want to know any more of that. Let's stick with Meghan for a little bit. Now, we've all watched, well, apparently not all of us have watched it actually, because it's done very well, very badly in the viewing figures on Netflix. Meghan's show. We don't think, we're waiting for it to be confirmed, we don't think we're going to get a third series. It was initially filmed about a year ago. Even the festive special edition even had a dead dog in it, that it was so old. If we believe this, that there will not be any more of this show, where does she go from there?
Well, I think she's already alluded to this when she gave her interview to Bloomberg last year, Matt, and she's talked about these kind of video shorts, these clips that were going to come out on her social media channels. They've got this first look deal with Netflix after their kind of all-encompassing deal came to an end. So Netflix will get first refusal on any projects, but Meghan's going to carry on doing what she does. She's going to focus on the As Ever brand, and we're going to see it pumped out on her social media channels rather than a full series. She talked about it being a lot of work to pull together those 2 series and the special. We might also get some more specials. We might get, you know, a July 4th special. It's a bit tight to do one for Valentine's Day this year, but, you know, we might get another holiday special next year,
a lot of followers,
for example.
she? I mean,
She does have a lot of followers.
Those YouTube things she could do. I think,
Netflix, although, you know, it wasn't the big ratings winner that we saw of Harry and Meghan. It was never going to be, was it? Because it's fairly niche content, watching someone kind of make jam and, you know, sprinkle flower petals, etc. But it did all right. And actually for Netflix, it was high profile in the fact that it got a lot of coverage. And so to them, that really
high profile
arguably a
was
success.
completely the right description. You know, it wasn't high quality or anything like that, or high interest or highly valued, but it was high profile, and maybe it's a vehicle to boost the sales of
because
her products.
Netflix are her partners in As Ever as well. So
maybe they're cleverer than we think.
Well,
Maybe we're sitting here
they
thinking
wouldn't
it's
spend
failed,
the
but
money
actually-
they spend on it if they didn't think they were getting value for money. They just wouldn't do it. The bean counters have gone through the figures and think it's worth the punt for that amount of money because for what they get, the traction they get.
You talk about shorts. I mean, she's done a lot more Instagram videos in the last couple of weeks. I have to admit, I don't obsessively watch her Instagram. I don't have alerts on her or anything like that. But
call yourself a journalist, Matt.
Well, I am told that she shared new social videos of Harry and her dancing, and they also went to a swimming with Lilibet, and Meghan and Harry dancing barefoot on the grass and feeding a black rhino at a zoo. Is that right?
All things you'd probably thought that a family would want to keep private.
Well, she joined in with this throwback nostalgia trend to 2016. So there was a video that was filmed by Lilibet of her and Harry dancing in 2026 in what looks like their garden in Monteito. And then the next image was of them in Botswana in 2016. And that was their very first holiday together when Harry's talked about them camping under the stars. I think it was like their third date or something like that. So...
Well, they had video of that, was that?
They just had a photograph of them standing in the water.
Thank you,
in
Sarah.
Botswana.
Thanks for
So
clearing
there
that
you
up.
go.
So it's a social media trend, a 2016
It's a social media trend.
Just retro, basically.
Yeah,
Retro.
looking back on a decade.
Well, I'm sure
how
she's
much
got a
has
lot of
changed.
photographs to supply, really. And that's, again, probably why the royal family, you know, will wait to see what comes out next on that way, because, you know, all these photographs have come when they didn't know they were being taken. So, you know, we still, the fact is, whilst they've got to make a living, and they make a living out of this sort of stuff, you know, how can the royal family really talk about a proper reconciliation?
Well, they've got new footage, I suppose, now, haven't they? They've got the, you know, as we're seeing here, she is actually producing a lot more images, videos of
But
their
the stuff
children.
that people are going to be more interested in, the stuff they're going to be more interested in is when it's connected to the royal family, in royal palaces and other things like that.
But I think what Meghan has been trying to do, and you know, and it's arguable how
Shift it,
successful,
yeah.
is trying to shift it to what she's doing. And you know, the podcast and everything else, the Confessions of a Female Founder, to present herself as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, as a working mum, and that she wants to move away from.
Sort of almost going back to when she was single.
Well, it's much more like the Tig.
Well, like the Tig,
Yeah.
and then it's a platform for herself.
Yeah.
Where does Harry fit in?
Yeah, and whatever anyone has thought about what she's been doing with that, in many ways it suits the royal family
authentic,
because it gives
yeah.
them something else to focus on and do.
It's consistent with what she was doing before.
Yeah.
Which is
Well, I might put alerts on Meghan's Instagram page if it's that interesting. And
I'll
keep
send
an eye on
them
it.
to you.
Thanks very much. We don't seem to have very many happy families at the moment. If we're talking about, you know, lack of reconciliation between King and Harry, or avoiding each other this week, we're just talking about Brooklyn Beckham and the Beckham situation. Rob, what's going on with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his daughters? There's a report saying that Princess Eugenie is going to cut off, or wants to, or at the moment is not speaking to Andrew after everything that's gone
there
on.
may well have been a sort of breakdown in communication. I mean, I've spoken to people close to them before, and I've got on fairly well with Sarah. I would say I wouldn't take that seriously. I would believe that the girls, both of those girls, are very forgiving. I think they're both charming, actually. And I would have thought, even if there's been a bit of a breakdown in communication, that it won't last indefinitely. I think they've had to put up with a lot, and they've probably want to focus on their own families at the moment. But I can't believe that either of his daughters will abandon Andrew completely.
Sarah, should we? Rob says no, but would you worry or fear or expect a kind of social media post from Eugenie or Beatrice in a Brooklyn Beckham or
No.
Prince Harry style?
No, and that family has always been extremely loyal to one another, no matter what has been going on. But I do think for Beatrice and Eugenie, this has been excruciating and very, very difficult indeed. And, as this was reaching its peak last year, Eugenie was there in New York promoting the work of her anti-slavery collective. And there we are talking about her father's friendship with someone who had trafficked young girls. So it is extremely difficult for them. Look, if there is a degree of self-preservation to say, I just can't deal with you and this at the moment, I don't know. But on the other hand, there will also be a duty of care and a concern about...
Yeah, I think so. They were all at the christening.
Yeah, so he was at the christening, though, but he was at the church service, wasn't he? And then
we've
afterwards.
also got to say that with Andrew, it looks from what the King's done, he moves out probably by the end of this month. There's still a lot of people, myself included, that thinks this guy really needs to answer some serious questions. And maybe his daughters are just saying, well, if you didn't do anything, why don't you come out and give evidence over on a Zoom link, but give evidence and try and clear your name? Because as it stands, we're all supposed to believe him when he says, I have nothing to do with this. Well, answer some serious questions. If it had been me or it had been Matt or anybody else, we'd probably been extradited. We'd certainly been looked into by Scotland Yard. There's no way this guy should be allowed to swan around from moving out of a palace and we say, oh, that's a shame, he's now lost his title. Who cares? If you're involved in something that is this serious, you should at least have the decency to answer questions under oath.
But one thing that we know about Andrew is that he doesn't listen to advice from anybody.
But he always said at the very beginning, in fact, the reason he settled was because he said they didn't want to upset the Queen's Jubilee. The fact is, there are serious questions that need answering.
Absolutely.
And he should answer them as any decent person would.
100%.
And I cannot believe at this day and age that just because you're very wealthy, just because you're the son of the former Queen, the brother of the King, that somehow you move from one big house to another slightly boggier house on a Sandringham estate, and that is justified. Answer questions under oath and stop making out in some ways you are a victim.
Yes.
Well, Rob, I have a theory here that I thought privately and not maybe said out loud, see how we go. But when he was a prince and when he was the Duke of York, I never thought there was any chance the FBI or the Metropolitan Police would ever speak to him. When I've been trying to find out about Marsh Farm, we broke the story that he's moving to Marsh Farm a couple of weeks ago, but when we were trying to investigate, we're told, well, he has data protection rules because he's a private individual. Is the stripping of Prince and Duke mean that he is now just a private individual and that opens up the chance that police or FBI could speak to him? They wouldn't when he was a prince or a duke, but now he's not a prince or a duke.
But the Scotland Yard have not even asked any questions. The only person that's asked any questions is in a set interview with Emily Maitlis, not under oath. In this day and age, that really isn't good enough. And I think this is probably the biggest scandal to impact the royal family ever since the abdication, and it's still not resolved, and it will never be resolved. It's no good the King and William saying, "Oh, we've dealt with it now."
And he always
It's not
said
good enough.
that he would help
He
with
did,
the
that's the
inquiries,
point.
and he would work to help
Clear his
the
name
victims.
and help the victims. What has he done to help the victims? Absolutely nothing.
And I think that is one of the biggest bones of contention with his
He's
daughters
done nothing.
as well, that he has done nothing to address the suffering of Jeffrey Epstein's victims.
Personally, going to Marsh Farm is not far enough away. He should be exiled out of the country. If he cannot answer questions under oath, kick him out the country.
How much time do you think he will actually spend at Marsh Farm?
Not hardly
or
any.
Will he be in the Middle East?
I think the Middle East is an absolute nailed-on area, along with Juan Carlos and other people. But the point of it is, just because you've got money and because you had a privileged position doesn't mean that you should be allowed to get away with not answering questions. They've only asked him to actually give evidence from England, so he's not going to be extradited on a video link. He can't. But he won't do it. I wonder why, because we know that he'd crack under the intense questioning, because he... we now know.
Well, he didn't serve very well under Emily
Pizza,
Maitlis's
no
questioning,
sweating, no Pizza Hut. Come on, it's ridiculous.
I think the idea is if he did actually, because he's not given evidence, but over video link, he could perjure himself and put himself into more trouble. So the idea is just shut up and say nothing.
But if, as he says, he's telling the truth and he had nothing to do with it, he's got no problems whatsoever, has he?
Yeah. Well, Marsh Farm, as I say, we've kept an eye on it. A lot of work's being done. We think should be there very soon. It's meant to be his permanent home, but this is the royal family. Who knows? Things change all the time, and we could see him in the Middle East. But the King's paying for him, so who else is going to pay for him if he doesn't?
And that gives him his UK base, doesn't it? Whatever happens, whether he goes to the Middle East, whether he goes to Switzerland or whatever, that means he has a UK base.
All right. Good old Andrew. I had the immense fortune of going to Scotland this week. I joined the King and Queen. They were in Edinburgh. The King was at Palace Holyrood House. Queen Camilla became, I don't know if you see this, she was in a Beano cartoon. Yeah. And then the Prince and Princess of Wales were in Stirling for 3 events. They went to see Team GB ahead of the Winter Olympics.
Curling in Stirling.
Joining the curling in Stirling. A wonderful weaving place, a charity where they were helping make the longest scarf in the world. And then, of course, they finished it off with going to the pub. I thought they looked great, particularly William and Catherine. Catherine's jacket, Sarah.
The coat. She had a double-breasted tartan coat, and that was made specifically for this engagement. She worked with Johnstone's of Elgin, a heritage Scottish brand, to design the tartan and make the coat. And that fits in, as well as a visit to the weavers as well, very much the work she's been doing around the British textile industry and supporting them, when they went to Wales and she visited at mill there, same in Yorkshire when she was looking at the sock making, for example. She's very much promoting the British textile industry. And also, as they visited the weaving charity in Scotland, that tied in with other elements, young people, mental health, sustainability. They are weaving together, if you excuse the pun, all of their various interests in these visits very carefully.
Catherine was, not criticised, but she was, became bottom of the list last year for the amount of engagements that she carried out. We can't give away too much, but because a couple of embargoes have come through recently, but they've set off at quite a pace this year. There seems to be a lot more work. We were told that at least once a week, at least once a month, I think it was, they will be doing some best of British project, and it really does feel like with this Stirling trip, it's kicked off what appears to be a busy week, a busy year for them.
Fair, last year she was still recovering and still was uncertain about her health. And I think everyone has to accept that, including the media. But I think they will plan things very carefully. And this idea of the best of British is a good idea. I've seen online, even people criticising them for this. There's always someone criticising, but I actually think the people around them and themselves are doing a sterling job.
They were very tactile with each other, weren't they, as well? William helping her onto the ice as they were curling, had their arms around each other.
Yeah. That was my video where they were posing for the pictures from behind.
Yes, there you go. Picked up on that. They seem, when they are out and about, much more willing to be themselves. Now, and I think that the public is responding very well to that.
And they are a happy family, unlike I know that their kids are quite young, but let's hope that stays like that.
Finally, we've been chatting for half an hour. We found a happy family.
Yeah, that's right.
We found a happy family within the royal family.
Good.
There's just one bad thing. They were, on the final job, there was a heckler, a sole heckler about Andrew, shouting, "What do you know about Andrew and Epstein?" The second time now, the King was heckled.
William is, we saw that William at Catherine, the Duchess of Kent's funeral, how uncomfortable he was when Andrew came up to him and started, talking and chatting to him. This is exactly why William has really been behind what's happened with Andrew, and making sure that when he becomes king, that this isn't something that's hanging over him. But the reality is, unless it's dealt with properly, as we've discussed before, I think this will be something that will just get worse.
I think this comes with the territory. Now they are going to be seeing this. We've seen the King with the Republican protesters pretty much wherever he goes. Andrew is another factor in the mix there. We've seen the hecklers towards the king
not wrong, really.
and to William and Catherine, and they just have to keep calm and carry on.
And I'm sure
what
they
can
hate
they
it.
say?
Yeah, I'm sure they hate it. But
Because they don't want it to be about Andrew. They want it to be about what they're doing.
But it's a fair comment.
Right, we just got time for our quickfire questions.
Yes.
OK, so with Meghan's Netflix show set to be axed, which royal should have their own show now? Who would you like to see more content from?
More content or more...
From? Well, I really enjoyed it when the King put together his playlist and did that whole kind of podcast thing. I thought he had a real aura about him and a presence. So maybe if he wanted to do a Desert Island Discs style show in a more regular format.
He's got a great voice.
He's got a great voice.
Rob?
I'd like to see, I think, more of Princess Anne. Maybe she could do a similar thing to that, because I think she's got the same wit and wisdom as the old Duke of Edinburgh used to have, Prince Philip. And I know that, I used to love going and watching him when he was out and about saying inappropriate things. It'd be quite good if more royals said inappropriate things.
She visits lighthouses during the summer. We could do a
I think she's got a great sense of humour. She's got a great sense of humour.
As William won't be able to scoot round Windsor anymore, what mode of transport should he use instead?
It's got to be a bike, hasn't it? He can't use his e-scooter, can't have motorised vehicles in Windsor Great Park. So I think he's got to go on a bike. Green credentials, we'll get him there fast.
Well, he's a prince. He should just take some of Prince Andrew's horses that he's been riding around with and just ride around on a white Charger or something, maybe.
And after Queen Camilla appeared in the Beano, which royal would you like to see in a comic strip and why?
Oh, what about Prince Louis in the Bash Street Kids? They're like in the classroom causing absolute mayhem. You can imagine the facial expressions behind the teacher's back.
Good answer.
The thing about this is, there's so many we could say, but the royals have been caricatured for so much, from spitting image onwards, that you sometimes start thinking of them like that. But I think that it'll be probably George, someone like Prince George. We're going to see a bit more of them soon, and maybe him.
Okay, and finally, my WhatsApp groups have been filled up this week about the Harry trial, and I'm sorry, but a lot of people have been talking about his hair. So I just want to mention some of the footage and some of the court sketches. Doesn't look like he's losing his hair. He has written about his brother's alarming baldness in Spare. So it's fair to ask: should Harry shave off the remaining hair on his head? Yes,
I think he has mocked his brother William about his baldness a lot, and likewise William mocked Harry about his ginger hair. Harry's actually had his head shaved before. When he was at school, he wrote about it in Spare that his mates got the clippers to him and it looked pretty alarming. But I just think embrace it. William's gone much, much, much shorter now, and it suits him, and I think Harry can do the same.
It's calmer, isn't it? I remember being in the suitor and they were being introduced to the king in the suitor, and all Harry was doing was ribbing his brother about going bald. And, it's be careful, all that ribbing, it's come back to haunt him. Should he shave it off? I think he should cling on.
You're going for the comb over?
Yeah, well, he's got a big beard. He can...
A divided panel, and never let it be said that Royal Exclusive don't get to the most, important and pertinent questions of the royal family. Harry's hair. Wonderful. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as usual, and remember to subscribe to us here on our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest on all things royal. We'll see you next week.